Hi, folks. I am going to record lecture 16 because there's a good chance we may not finish lecture 16 on Tuesday before your exam on Thursday. So, in the event that we don't, you will have lecture 16 in video form to study for exam 4, and the semester is coming to an end. I bet you're happy about that. All right, so let's do this. Let's get into today. We're going to talk a little bit about the loanable funds market, interest rates, and how interest rates are set in the loanable funds market. So before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about why interest rates are important. Normally, when we see a graph in economics, we see the price of money on the y-axis and the price of something on the y-axis and the quantity of something on the x-axis. This graph is a little bit different because it's showing the interest rate, which is the price of money, on the x-axis. And then on the y-axis, we're looking at the number of, let's say, households that can afford to buy a house. So when the interest rates are relatively high, very few people can borrow money and repay that loan in a way that they could, let's say, buy an average price single family home. So you're going to have less activity there. But as the interest rate drops, the number of people who can afford to repay a loan to buy a single family home goes up, but it doesn't go up in a nice linear fashion. It goes up in an exponential or reverse exponential fashion, if you like. So when the interest rate is relatively low, say relatively low might be 5%, and the interest rate falls by 1/4%, the number of people who can afford to buy a home goes up more than linear. If, on the other hand, the interest rate, let's say, were 4% and it fell by 1/4%, then the increase in the number of people who could afford to buy a single family home goes up at a much faster rate than that. So small changes in the interest rate when the interest rate is low actually has a big effect, let's say, on the number of people who will be able to repay a loan of any given amount. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the interest rate by looking at the money demand curve, and then we'll bring in the money supply curve. So imagine that we start off over here at point A, and for whatever reason, the interest rate were to go up. So if we're at A, this would be the interest rate right here. Imagine that the interest rate were to rise from this level to something like this level. In other words, we go from A to C on the money demand curve. Why is it that we have a lower quantity demanded of money when the interest rate goes up? Because fewer people will want to borrow at the higher interest rate, or maybe fewer people qualify to borrow money at the higher interest rate. But whatever the case may be, we will see a lower quantity demanded of money because the interest rate is higher. Again, let's say we start off over here at A, and at A, this is the interest rate. And imagine that for one reason or another, the interest rate were to fall from here to here. Because the interest rate's lower, now more people will borrow money, or maybe more people will qualify for a loan of a certain amount. So we slide down the money demand curve from A to B over here. All right, now let's talk a little bit about things that will shift the demand for money. So if we have a change in the price level, either deflation or inflation, the demand for money will shift. So if prices in general were to go down, that's deflation, then the demand for money would shift leftward because fewer people either need to borrow money to buy things, or maybe they don't want to borrow money, but we're going to assume that there isn't a need for as much money because prices are lower. On the other hand, if prices were to rise, then the demand for money would increase as well, just to keep up with the changes in the overall price level. Another thing that affects the demand for money would be household income. So if household income were to rise because consumption and income are closely related, then people would consume more if their income goes up. So their demand for money would go up as well. On the other hand, if incomes were to fall, people would cut back at least on some purchases. Even if you want to smooth out your consumption, you would probably look for ways of cutting back. And when you have fewer expenses, your demand for money would also be less. So as a result of that, the demand for money would shift to the left. The third thing that would affect the demand for money would be income of businesses. So if businesses are more active. They're selling more than they need to maybe buy more in the way of inputs. Inputs could be things like workers might be working more. They might need to hire more workers, or they might need to buy more inventory, or they might need to make more product. All those things are going to require more money to pay for. So we show that as a rightward shift in the demand for money. On the other hand, if incomes were to go down, businesses would cut back. Would probably cut back on the amount of new investment. They'd probably cut back on the amount of hours that workers work. They might even lay workers off in an extreme situation. But all of these things would lead to a leftward shift in the demand for money. All right, so now what we'll do is we'll go to the Fed funds market and we'll look at how the interest rate is set in the Fed funds market. So what we're doing is we're showing our downward sloping money demand curve and a vertical line for the money supply curve. The reason we represent the money supply curve as a vertical line is because the supplier of last resort in the Fed funds market is the Fed. So the Fed is not at all influenced by the price of money, the interest rate. On the contrary, they usually have a target rate and they're willing to adjust the supply of money in order to reach that target rate. So try to imagine that maybe we start off over here with a target interest rate in the Fed funds market of 6%. Imagine that the Fed thinks that 6% is too high, so they want a lower interest rate. What they might do is increase the supply of money, and now we slide from 6% down to 5.5% over here. And then try to imagine at the lower interest rate of 5.5%, the demand for money might increase. In other words, banks in the Fed funds market might find it advantageous to borrow more at this interest rate, and so the demand for money might shift to the right, and the interest rate might settle out over here at 5.75%. So if this is the Fed's new target rate, 5.75%, then the Fed has accomplished its goals. It can call it a day, go out and play golf, do whatever it is that they do at the end of the day, and they don't have to worry about anything. On the other hand, if the Fed's new target rate was really 5.5% all along, and the first increase in the supply of money got them to 5.5%, but maybe they didn't anticipate the new demand for money, bringing the interest rate back up to 5.75%, the Fed could still achieve that 5.5% target interest rate by increasing the money supply one more time. They could do it 2 more times, 3 more times, 4 more times. They can do it as many times as they want until they get that target rate. And the way it actually works is, I think sometime around 1, 2, or 3, sometime in the afternoon, every day of the week, the Fed, all the Fed member banks come into the Fed funds market either to lend out excess reserves to banks that need it, or if you're a bank that doesn't have sufficient reserves, you would borrow in the Fed funds market, and the Fed's overseeing the whole thing, and they can provide additional liquidity or remove liquidity as needed to achieve a target rate. And this happens really quickly. I don't think these auctions or the whole process takes more than 45 minutes or so, and that's how they achieve their target rate. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between permanent open market operations and temporary open market operations. What we were just talking about now involves temporary open market operations. That's just basically the Fed adjusting the money supply so that they can achieve a certain target Fed funds rate. Permanent market open operations is another thing the Fed does, and that's slightly different. That involves supplying the economy with a sufficient amount of money, a sufficient amount of liquidity, so that the economy can grow at whatever its long-term rate of growth happens to be. So it could be 2%, 2.5%. If you have a growing economy, that economy is going to need more money, and so the Fed will adjust the money supply to provide enough money to the economy, but also to prevent there from being too much inflation. You just don't want to supply unlimited amounts of money if the economy is maybe growing by 2.5%, because that could be potentially inflationary. All right, so then if we don't borrow money in the Fed funds rate market, if the only people who do are banks, why do we care about the interest rate in the Fed funds market? Because it could potentially affect the interest rates that you and I might pay for something like a mortgage. So here's the thinking, and it doesn't always happen this way. I mean, there are times when a decrease in the Fed funds rate ultimately spills into the mortgage market and leads to lower interest rates. But there are times when a decrease in the Fed funds rate doesn't change the interest rate in the mortgage market all that much. But here's the logic, or here's the reason why it could. Let's say you get an increase in the supply of money, which lowers the interest rate in the Fed funds market from R1 to R2. Now banks have more money, and maybe they decide that what they want to do with that is put it into treasuries. So they supply more money in the treasury market, and now the interest rate there falls. Or it could be that people are looking at what's happening in the Fed funds market. They're seeing a decrease in the Fed funds rate, and they anticipate that the interest rate on long treasuries, 20 years, are going to go down. So they buy them now before they do. In any event, we get a lower interest rate in the 20-year T-bill market. And then imagine that you're a lender. You lend to people to buy homes. And these loans that you make to people look an awful lot like a 20-year treasury. Why is that? Because you're going to loan out money today, and if you hold on to that mortgage, you're going to get paid back over the next 20, 30 years, or what have you. Well, your opportunity cost of money essentially is, if you're willing to wait a long period of time, essentially is the interest rate, let's say, in the 20-year treasury market or the 30-year treasury market. So if you see a decline in the interest rate in that market, you might also decide that to accept a lower interest rate on the mortgages that you make. Of course, that interest rate is still going to be higher than the interest rate on 20-year treasuries because there's more risk involved, but you might be willing to accept a lower rate. There might be more activity in that market, and that would lead to a lower mortgage rate, which would be good for people who are looking to borrow money to buy a home. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the loanable funds market as if it were one market. The loanable funds market is actually multiple markets, but we make simplifying assumptions in economics. So what we'll do is we'll imagine that we're only talking about one market, and we'll talk about why the demand curve takes on the shape it does and why the supply curve takes on the shape it does. So borrowers in the loanable funds market will borrow more money if the interest rate is low. If the price of money, the interest rate drops, then we're going to assume that the quantity demanded of money is going to increase. First law of demand, essentially. The supply curve in the loanable funds market is upward sloping, and the reason it's upward sloping is because the Fed is not the only player in this market. The Fed is supplying money in the Fed funds market, and some of that money might come out of the Fed funds market into other loanable funds markets, but there are other players, other participants in there as well. And what they're trying to do, what they would do is supply more money if the price of money, the interest rate, was higher, supply less if the interest rate was lower. So any liquidity that comes into the loanable funds market, additional liquidity, we'd show as an increase in the supply of money, and it would likely lead to a decrease in the interest rate in that market as a result. All right, I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to post these in pieces so that these files don't become too big.